so my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $50 million back then.
Okay, it is Friday night, and this is UFO Classified. I'm your host, Erica Lukes, who has been here every Friday night for over 5 years. I have just found that I love doing radio. I love talking to people. I love the friendships that I've made, even though sometimes this field, as you've heard my struggles off and on, has just been, it can be pretty brutal. But at the end of the day, when I talk to people like Gordon Lohr, who I want to give you the update, I talked to Gordon last night, and he's getting ready to move to an assisted living center, which is going to be hard for him, but he is, he's probably flirting with the ladies. I am sure that he is getting all the physical exercises that he needs, and I know he's going to feel a ton better. And I gave him a big shout out from all of you who have expressed your love and concern for him. He is 85, and he has been such an inspiration and a very, very dear friend to me. I love him so much, and so I'm happy to report that he is hanging in there and he's getting the help he needs, and so hopefully one of these days he will be back on the show to talk about NICAP, because I'm just finding more stuff every single day. So I want to give a shout out to all of you who listen faithfully to my show, and I'm always surprised when somebody messages me or I talk to somebody on the phone and that clearly people are listening to every show and they're paying attention to some of the things that I'm putting forward. They're asking intelligent questions, and that is truly why I am here every week, because this is such a sticky subject. I want us to move through this and to have a sense of community and, just somebody that has your back. I feel like you have my back. I have your back, and I just appreciate all of you very much. And so thanks again for getting into chat. Thank you for supporting the show. And I'm really, really, really super stoked about tonight because we've got a lot to talk about. Dave Beaty is here. He's been on my show before, and I have just a lot of respect for him. Every time, and I was telling him this before the show started, just every time I see a picture of him and his wife and his granddaughter, it makes me so happy, because they just have this expression of joy on their face, and it's you look at that and it really just instantly uplifts you, and I think it's a really cool thing. He has done extensive work, as we know, on the Nimitz, and I love it. He's an Emmy award-winning producer, cinematographer, researcher, journalist. He's an expert in UAV systems, digital camera systems, encoding, film, lighting, video editing, motion graphics, dynamic media design, and 3D graphics. Seriously, I mean, honestly, I know that there's a ton more that you do, Dave, but I
do all that stuff.
Well, I would be happy if I could unmute my mic.
Well, yeah, I forget too. I had to look up here, that's always the problem, even though we have all these digital things, like everyone has to be told, please unmute your mic. It's like the 2020 Zoom problem that they never fixed. So
okay, I have to ask you, because I was talking about this today, but did you see the Zoom, like the lawyer cat video?
I think I heard of it, but what is it? The lawyer? Yeah. The filter, the plug-in.
Yes. Oh,
that's hilarious.
Oh my God, I think I've watched that like 100 times, because every time I see it, I'm just like, that is the best, and that is something I would do. So
oh my gosh, that was like so typical of technology just kind of taking over our lives, And then the other part, did you see the? I think it was a plastic surgeon zooming in for some type of court hearing while he was performing surgery. And the judge was saying, "Sir, are you sure that you're okay to, have this hearing today?" And he's like dressed in scrubs and everything. He's
Oh,
performing
wow.
surgery. Like, of course, that wasn't cool, but yeah.
Well, clearly I know what I'll be doing. I actually have to say that I did go down that rabbit hole of like, okay, I'm going to watch, Zoom calls gone awry and things, but it just makes
Yeah.
me giggle, and it just goes to show that I'm not the only one who is special in that department, but clearly you have a lot more going for you in that regard, which I love. And you've done, I want to just tell people you have an Emmy Award for craft camera on the Travel Channel's Water's Edge, the Bahamas, and then you received an Emmy Award for editing a PBS documentary, Children of the Fourth World. You have the International Monitor Award for Uncommon Friends of the 20th Century, and many other things that you have done. And so it is really cool to see you getting into the UFO thing. You've formed this cohesive group where people are asking intelligent questions, and you're not afraid to, as more information comes to light, you're definitely willing to accept that, yeah, we're going to learn things. I'm going to change my ideas and thoughts on things. And I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you can look back at the stuff that I did, in television, and it was always a challenge, a project that would be like, okay, like, how can we make this really cool? This, whatever the topic would be, and to this day, I'm doing that outside of the UFO field with the World War II Foundation. I've done like 4 films for them that are PBS films. That's kind of the main thing. They're on Amazon Prime, and these are telling sort of living histories of these guys that, the Greatest Generation, these guys that were there in the Pacific. A lot of the films I've been doing recently are the war in the Pacific, in capturing these interviews before these guys pass on. Because even the youngest, guys that were 17 years old when they enlisted or were drafted were now in their upper 90s. So it's, not too late. We have to like get this stuff. So that's what I've been really doing, my full-time gig, so to speak. But, I still really love digging into this stuff that happened with the Nimitz and the ATIP, and this whole like last 3 or 4 years fascinates me. So, I've been constantly trying to dig up more stuff because, obviously the Nimitz event, there's still some stuff out there, but it kind of isn't as current as some of the newer things going on. And I like to stay up to date, and people like yourself and other people in social media world constantly are giving me information and helping me, further my own personal exploration of this topic. So, yeah.
And it is really interesting. I mean, I have learned so much about so many things just from, digging into the UFO topic, and it really has expanded. I've grown as a person, and I enjoy that, and I know other people feel the same, and they should. I mean, we should be empowered to look into this subject and to ask questions, and sometimes I think, as you have seen, especially in the social media world, we're not necessarily empowered, or we're not supported, and so it's a tough subject to get into, but when you find the right group and the right people, it can be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling was, there's sort of that mass group of UFO Twitter or whatever social sphere you're in, of Reddit, and there's so many voices, it's almost impossible to like discern, to zero in really on something specific. So I tend to kind of, have smaller groups, because at least you can get to know like the people that you're interacting with a little bit better. But not to say that there's anything wrong with that huge, throw it out there and let the wolves attack or whatever type of freestyle. But I've always said, hey, I like kind of these private Facebook groups a little better because it allows you to expand on ideas. You're not limited. You can write, a whole essay if you want. And that's been, my mainstay. And only in the last couple of years, I've done more tweeting and so on. And, I've been using both of them for a while, so I'm not sure about you, but
No, well, you know what? I mean, I don't know what, I guess I'm Grandma Moses, and I'm, like I'll do Facebook and, and stuff, but, if I even do that and I'm not good at it, and Twitter, I don't know. Sometimes I get in there and I see things and I see conversations and it's like you can get in there and fall into this pit. And it's like, for me, I'm just like, I can't do it. Maybe I should.
yeah.
Maybe I should get my tweet on, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its place, I guess, for instantaneous, commentary, running commentary, and I think the Facebook has, for me, anyways, been a repository where I can go back, like to something that happened years ago and pull up a full interaction that's more in depth. Whereas Twitter, I think it's, for me anyways, a little harder to go back and do research there. You can, and I've kind of like been examining that a little bit more, where you can like try to follow somebody, then go back and find some things they said, before, and do searches and so on. It's a little bit more challenging though.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to get in there and muck around and stuff and try to stay out of trouble, because if I am tweeting, maybe I shouldn't be tweeting specific things, because I can be a little spicy sometimes, but I know you never would have known that about me.
Yeah, there's some serious wars that go on. I mean, like Facebook's nothing compared to Twitter. I mean, if you go on UFO Twitter, I mean, there's like battles that take place on there that, there's like no prisoners or whatever. There's bodies laying all over at the end of it. And then, hopefully, like, a month later, they're all shaking hands and, back debating again. So.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's like a little sandbox, and everybody's got their turf, and I don't know. I don't know. The whole thing is so interesting, but maybe tonight's the night I'll start tweeting, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But for people that have not heard our other interviews, could you just go back to and explain like why you got involved with UFOs? What sparked your interest?
Sure. I mean, I've always been interested in the subject matter, as many people. They probably were exposed to books and so on by their parents that had those interests. And I think for many of us, it wasn't just UFOs, but any kind of paranormal stuff, whether it's reincarnation and ghosts and anything like that. So, I mean, I did a lot of reading when I was younger, and then followed, through as a young adult. And then when I came down to Florida, where I live now, in the early 90s, I joined the Mutual UFO Network and became a field investigator, and I did that for a while. So that was sort of my indoctrination into the research side of studying UFO cases. And then, over time, I kind of became a filmmaker doing television journalism, graduating out of that into television production. And I've continued to do that throughout my whole career. So the UFO thing was kind of always like a side light, and I didn't pursue the field investigation side with MUFON. I only did that for a little while, and I kind of hung my field investigator badge up and kind of put that away for a long time. And it was only the New York Times article that kind of stoked my interest coming back in 2017 to getting back into the field. So.
Well, I mean, and I bet, being in Florida and meeting some people down there, I know that there's some great people that are involved with MUFON, down there, and I speak with them, so yeah, I'm sure that was really cool. And so what did you think about the organization as a whole?
Well, I mean, back then in the early 90s, I really was interested in these cases and putting together like as many stories, and the journal would come out. You would like rip it out of the mailbox, this like physical magazine that would, in an almost scientific manner describe these events, very straightforward. There wasn't a lot of analysis or, the promoting any one theory or anything like that. So that was kind of at that time I was really interested in that. Of course, my mom lived in Gulf Breeze for a while. I would go up there and visit and do sky watches during the Ed Walters event, and we would go out and look at night over Santa Rosa Sound. And of course, I never saw anything, but my mom did. She did see the what they called the red light UFO. They nicknamed it Bubba, because that up there, it's kind of like the Redneck Riviera. But so we, that was cool. And then, over time, I just kind of got a little more disillusioned with it. Some of the metaphysical side of it, kind of to me wasn't really in the same interest area as the scientific study of it, or the more analytical approach to reporting. So I think that's why, I kind of got out of it after that.
Yeah, it is interesting because obviously it's a volunteer organization, and so you've got people from all walks of life and different belief systems and things, and that does make it interesting when you start to see how people are using kind of the UFO thing as a platform to promote a specific religious idea, or some this angels or demons, or
Right.
all of these things, and I find that really fascinating. And it definitely, for me, looking at the different chapters and the types of people that they promote, there's not a lot of cohesion in that, and I understand that it is a volunteer organization, so it's difficult.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. The whole subject is interesting in that regard when you go back historically and look at the way certain people with religious or political ideas insert things into the narrative and use the subject for their own purpose.
Right. And so I can't really speak to what happened to MUFON, in all those years that I wasn't part of it. But, when I did get back into it, I quickly discovered the Scientific Coalition for Ufology, and it just so happened some of the people that I was interacting with were involved as volunteers with that group. And I was like, wow, this mission sounds really what I always wanted to do, which was, apply scientific principles to analysis and reporting. And, I really applaud the efforts that they've done with their conferences. I know they have one coming up this early summer, and then the papers they've produced are just fascinating. So,
yeah, it is interesting to see how you have a group of people that were in MUFON, and I think pretty frustrated with the lack of certain scientific protocols being followed and things. They've put together that organization, from the looks of it, there are some very impressive people that are involved, and so that is it's cool. And I think the world of Robert Powell, I really like him a lot. And when I was state director for Utah MUFON, I worked with him on a couple cases, and I like him. He's a good guy.
Yeah. And the paper that he co-authored on the Nimitz event is probably one of the foremost scientifically kind of based report on that's out there, if not the only one. I'm pretty sure it is. So
I'll have to read that again. It's been so long, but that's it. I mean, it's just it's cool, and there are people like that. In fact, I will reach out to Robert and see if he wants to come on the show, because it's been way too long since I've had him on, and he's runs with some interesting people and that have been involved in the subject for a long time, and so that would be fun. So you I am very much like you in the regard that I had an interest as a small child, and I was always looking at different things, ghosts, and all of this stuff, and it's been an interesting transition, into the UFO world. And I've got a question here from Peter, who's in chat, and he wants to know, when you were with MUFON, what was your most interesting case?
Well, I'd have to think about that, because the honest to God truth is, with that organization, you could be with them for a long time and really not, be involved in any big case. And because I'm in a medium-sized city here in Southwest Florida, while I was a field investigator, not much was happening here, unfortunately. So, I wasn't personally like a lead investigator on any big UFO case. And then, of course, like decades later, I find out a guy emailed me just recently saying that he had like a close encounter, like a CE3 type thing, just 20 miles from here in the early 90s. And I'm like, well, come on, man. No one was reporting UFOs in Fort Myers, but so, yeah, I mean, as a field investigator, I wouldn't say there was any big case that comes to mind. They were all pretty small lights in the sky type events where we would talk to a witness and get all the specifics, the angles above the horizon, what time, and, check the weather. There was an interesting case in a town close here called Cape Coral. It's over the bridge. Great little city there. And an individual had videotaped this silver geometrical kind of shaped object just above his house, and it was slowly moving across the sky. And I would almost describe it as like two silver polygons that were connected at one point together. And so he's videotaping it with a small like 8mm video camera, and it's just kind of floating in the sky, and he zooms in on it. It's definitely silver and reflective, not making any movements that are too strange, and it just kind of eventually disappears. So that was an interesting case since we had visual evidence, and I ended up working with the naval photo analyst, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who I worked on that case by sending him the video for analysis, and he and I kind of determined that it looked and behaved that it could be a balloon type object, just simply because it didn't display any movements or capabilities that were unusual. And I determined that it was going in the general direction of the wind. So there you go. There's an interesting case that I did, but not all cases turn out to be unexplained. I mean, 93 or whatever, there's a certain percentage of cases that are explained as prosaic or explainable in some way, and that's what you do as a field investigator. So,
well, and that's interesting that you got the chance to work with Maccabee. How old was he at that point?
I'm not exactly sure. That was in probably like 91 or 92, and he's still going strong. Obviously retired. And still playing the keyboards. I still keep in touch with him. But because of the work that he did on the Gulf Breeze case, that's how I kind of got in touch with him and some of the people in that part of North Florida when I was a field investigator. And, I contacted him from our, our section down in the south and said if he would be willing to help me. So that's how that took place, and he gave me a really nice written report, presented that to MUFON and also the witness. Obviously some people don't like to hear, or they say, well, maybe that fits the description of what I saw, but I'm telling you that was not a balloon, that kind of thing,
Yeah, it is interesting to try to broach that, and that's one thing that I found really interesting too with obviously, again, being in a volunteer organization and people that don't necessarily know how to relay information. And it's like, there were people that I heard were very rude to people when, when that type of situation occurred. And it's, and I think that if it's the way you go, sometimes it's the way you go about it. And if you empower people, no, you didn't see, A, B, C, and D, but how cool that you were out there and you were doing this and yada, yada, yada,
right.
Which I'm sure you did, but it's all, it's
well,
fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, an explanation is simply an explanation. It doesn't mean that's what the person saw. In many cases, when they see a light in the sky, there's just not enough detail to definitively figure out what it is. It's impossible. So unless you have, much more data to work with, sometimes it's like, well, this is probably the most probable explanation, and the person may accept it, or they may, just disagree with you. But I think that was an important role that we had, was to try to see if there was something that could describe it. And, I mean, I even to this day, when I look at cases, there's so many cases where people will automatically jump to the conclusion that this is an unknown or is definitely, extraterrestrial or something. They'll see a video or something like that. I always start with the fact that, I'm going to say that this isn't real, and then try to figure out if I can put anything together that would support that hypothesis. And if you end up no, I can't find anything that this fits in, then you start moving on to, pushing towards that ultimate in this field, which is a true unknown that cannot be described by any type of natural or man-made type of effect.
Yeah, and that, again, that is an interesting thing. What do you think about, because I have a very good friend who has been on the show, and he has contributed a lot, in my opinion, to the subject, but we always kind of go off the rails with our thought process when he's I mean, this is ET and yada yada and different things, and the more I learn, the less likely I think that is. I'm not saying it's not, but I've just learned so much, and my thoughts and feelings have changed, as I'm sure yours have.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like is that, as science progresses and as we look at physics and our natural world around us, there's so many mysteries that have not been explained, and there's, peculiar mysteries that revolve around sightings of unknown, unidentified objects. And, we don't know what those are in many cases, but is it because, they're obviously extraterrestrial, or is it because we haven't figured out the answers yet? And I always believe that we haven't figured out the answers yet, but we can figure out the answers. We will eventually know the answers to it. And so we have to keep pushing forward and staring out at the horizon, saying that, as humanity and as science progresses forward, we are going to learn things that were probably right in front of our faces the whole time that we just didn't know about. And there'll be a breakthrough or paradigm, and this next evolution of thought will take place, and we'll kind of understand. And, some of that might be in consciousness. Some of that might be in, the human soul or our personalities, and what, consciousness and energy in our bodies and our life here on this planet, in our universe and physical reality. Maybe that physics will begin to start putting that together with consciousness to discover that, this is sort of a simulation, or it could be a simulation, and that we represent advanced technology ourselves, that we don't, here we're kind of in a camouflage situation where we can't see, that this is, part of something that we're aware of, but just not right now while we're alive. That there might be multi-dimensions, and that we as personalities participate and willingly know about that, but that we don't perceive it in our waking lives. And that's programmed into why we're here. We have a reason for being here. I mean, you could say that's a religious type ideology, but I don't know. And that's what I'm trying to say is I think that we will eventually find the answer. We just can't say we know the answer now, because we don't.
Right.
There's too many. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff that you can't deny it, that is high strangeness, and events that really happen and things. I mean, military pilots are seeing UAP, and it's undeniable, and the capabilities are undeniably non-human. Unless there's some secret government that has the most advanced technology hidden, which everyone says that's not true, then this stuff has to be coming from somewhere else. So,
well, it's also interesting, and I think that it's hard for me because I've obviously over time developed a little bit more skepticism. I mean, I've had experiences that I can't explain. I know, I mean, and I don't want to look to anybody else to explain it for me, but
Right.
it's fascinating. It's what keeps, one of the reasons I love pursuing this topic and things. And I think if we are so arrogant that we could sit here and say, this is, I mean, there aren't possibilities out there, and that we know everything and everything is black and white. I think that there are problems with believing too much, and there are problems with thinking that we are where everything begins and ends, and our knowledge at present is everything.
Right. I mean, as I've kind of, aged, so to speak, I've become more aware that there's definitely an extension to us that is right at the surface. It goes right beyond us into, I think this interconnectedness with everybody that we're here with, those closest to us, and in foreign nations and all of humanity are connected and here together. Again, I don't know what the answer is, and I think that we will know what the answer is eventually. Just as if you look at the history of our technical advancement and development as a species on this planet, you could probably say that as the future unfolds, we're going to discover many more paradigms that would be just equally as revolutionary as the Industrial Revolution, for instance. And you could go through and look at all of the discoveries man has made. So I think that the UAP UFO phenomena fits in there somewhere, and we're going to surpass that at one point and acquire the knowledge, and we will suddenly know what that is and why we are encountering it, why people are having these interactions, what it means. But I am firmly in the position of, okay, I can entertain hypothesis, but I'm more into I want to collect the evidence, and I want to hear the stories and try to connect dots and try to find common themes that might have one little atom of truth that no one's thought about before, and that pushes it forward one step. I mean, I'm not a trained scientist, so I can't use that skill set, but I'll just use what I can. And I always encourage people that, you don't have to be a celebrity. You don't have to be the military commander, or anybody can actually help with this by just using their brain and trying to find slivers of information and help bring that forward.
Right, absolutely. We all have such valuable things, and I think it, from listening to you talking about interviewing some of the World War II vets, and how important it is to hear their story and to have that personal exchange with somebody. And I for me, that's been such a great joy with the UFO stuff. I could sit and talk to Gordon Lohr for hours and hear his stories, and just, it's like, I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't think I'll ever solve the mystery of whatever we're dealing with, or the multitude of things. But it's like, I love that personal exchange. And I love being able to preserve a history like you did.
Yeah. I mean, really, when you get right down to it, that's what this is all about. It's about listening to people, especially people that have had close encounters, and more recently, the idea of individuals that have come into proximity of this, what they perceive as advanced technology. I mean, I use the word machines and so on, but even the witnesses themselves, oftentimes that's what they think they're seeing is a technology, triangular shaped craft, specifically, where it seems that being in the proximity of this stuff changes them. And that's very unique. And I know that that's some of the cutting edge research that's being done to try to find, if people that have had close encounters experiences have any physical changes in DNA or their brain structure. Obviously, when you interview those people or they tell you their story, they can tell you straight up, that maybe it changed their life, and that at that point in time, if they went back, they could see a complete change that occurred. Some people acquire great knowledge, or suddenly they acquire skills that they never had before. And I think it's really interesting, and it's a clue to me. So, because I don't think it's just about describing a thing in the sky and writing down excuse me, what they saw in the light configuration. It's listening to the stories of the people that were there. What did they see? Did they experience any other effects later? And oftentimes, as yeah, it's like this has continued on with them. It wasn't just a one-off thing in the sky. It's changed their lives,
Yeah, I mean, it really does. I mean, I've obviously we both had an interest since childhood, but I mean, some of the things, I mean, there was a specific point in time where it was like, okay, wow, we're digging in with both feet, and it is interesting, and sometimes it's really amazing to see how people have grown and changed and progressed, and then sometimes it's really sad to see how destructive it can be when you have a personal experience and you get wrapped up with the wrong group of people who are trying to manipulate your thought process or trying to, I don't know what, check your DNA, get you into some little secret program.
Yeah, I guess, when people have a very profound experience, they're going to go out there searching for, someone to talk to. And unfortunately, to this day, it's very difficult for those individuals to find anything that's what would be they're seeking, which is some type of, I guess, approval in some ways, somebody that's going to listen and not just dismiss what they're trying to say if it's a profound experience for them, but talk to other people and so on. And, while I think that science and research programs are valuable tools, I think that there's other aspects of this that it has to be done with the sensitive idea that these people's psyches may have been impacted by this. Obviously, the burden of carrying the knowledge of what they experienced may have been very traumatic. PTSD, I think, is probably very common. And, let's not forget that people that experience this stuff, they need help. They need people that are experts in dealing with those types of traumatic events, PTSD being one. So that's first and foremost in my mind,
And that's, I as I look back, and I've mentioned this on many shows, I mean, I think of different conferences I've been to, and I think of how, you go by these groups of people that are doing their hypnosis and then talking about, their, I mean, I don't know what, star seeds or whatever is happening for the day and different things, and how these people are, I mean, I think we need to be a little conscious of of stuff like that, because we're instilling something that isn't necessarily, it might not be the case. And I think you can it's just to me, it's just a little concerning now that I look back on things.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, of course, in my world, I wasn't necessarily dealing with people myself. I always followed the cases, and I would sort of, I think, selectively read stuff over the years, that kind of avoided too much of the starseed style.
Yeah, I can't picture you as a starseed kind of guy.
Right, I mean, my mom is very metaphysical and talks to her spirit guides, and would attend those types of awakening conferences, and she fully believes that, and I have no problem with it. Someone else is believing, but to me, I'm just kind of more analytical about it. I always took that tact, and I was always more interested in, again, the whole military UAP topic area really was interesting to me because I already had this deep interest in military systems and military history, and then putting it together with a research angle of, wow, I want to learn about this fighter jet system and these sensor systems, and then put that together with that these guys were seeing this outlandish stuff, and try to on my own go out there and bring forward new information that no one's heard about. And that's really, that's wow, that's really cool to me. So, I really also love reading the greatest cases that are out there, the Travis Walton case and the Pascagoula, Mississippi UFO cases, and all of the famous ones. I've definitely totally read that. And then, the John Mack stuff and all of the abduction books, Bud Hopkins through the years, that material is fascinating to me. So.
Yeah, I really remember, as a teenager being, struck, picking up communion, looking at, intruders and different things like that were kind of focused on the abduction aspect of things. And it was very fascinating. And now, as I look back and I'm putting together the pieces of okay, this person was funded by this person. And, there was, I think there are lots of threads there. And so now it wasn't as pure as it was back then. It wasn't as exciting because I'm seeing behind the scenes a little bit more and have some concerns. But I love, as you and I have talked about some things like that, and it is interesting. But let's go to the December 2017 article in the New York Times that just kind of flipped your lid. And so when you saw that, what was your first thought?
Well, I think it was just simply the stature of the paper, Politico and Washington Post, actually running a story that was dealing with that topic seriously. And the fact that the realization that the U.S. government had funded a program that was looking at it and taking it seriously. And then, it was compounded by the almost weekly news story that was adding more and more. If you remember that 6-month period, almost every month something was coming out, and everyone was just, what's going to come out next? We were just all waiting. The videos kind of came out, and To the Stars Academy was involved in. Everybody was hanging on the words of Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Steve Justice and what was going to come out next. And then Commander Dave Fravor shows up, and it's national media feeding frenzy. So, it just blew my mind pretty much. I don't think we had ever seen anything like that in any of the stuff that I recall, any of the cases. I obviously I was kind of too young to be part of the Blue Buck and Condon report and what kind of media attention that generated. Was a different era. But in 2017, the New York Times cover story was fascinating, and I think that ignited my interest in that specific case. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting because it's that was, you're looking at the cover of the New York Times and hello, Dolly, you've got, this is what's happening. And I remember, talking to my colleagues and friends at the time, and just their different, some were very skeptical of things, and some were questioning the people that were writing the article, or the way things were rolling out. And was this, again, just another attempt by the powers that be or by different factions to steer a narrative to hide something else? And there were so many, and there still are so many questions about it. And, you look at what's happened with To the Stars now and things, and it's been an interesting evolution, so to speak, to watch that. And so, what are your like? How have your thoughts changed over the years from when you first initially read that article to now?
Well, I mean, because I got into the research and investigation of what was being reported and what statements were being made by the pilots, by some of the official documents that were released. And, there was some discrepancy that made you wonder, because again, when I first started this whole thing, I thought it was really interesting. And my first initial thoughts is either this is like a secret weapon system or secret aerospace vehicle that we have developed, and that we're using, or the powers that be are using the UFO cover story once again as a counterintelligence mean of covering up the existence of this stuff. So that's one idea, and then the other idea is no, they're being brutally honest, and they're saying that they do not know where this stuff is coming from, but yes, it's real, and they're seeing it, and they have video and photographic evidence and lots of firsthand witnesses of this stuff going on. So, I mean, that was the initial thing that I think a lot of people thought was one or the other. And, I stand here today going, at least in the Nimitz event, most likely also the Roosevelt event in 2015, I still feel the same way. I mean, I don't think that it's ours really, because I don't think that the DOD and the Navy and everything would actually use that type of story and then test this stuff against unwitting pilots, throw secret machines, so to speak, out in front of jet fighters without their knowledge of this test being done and that they're observing the reaction. I mean, people have said, oh yeah, that could happen, but other people that are in the Navy say absolutely not. And then people that are in, the obviously black project world have also said we would not do that. We're actually trying to cloak our technology, not let anyone see it. That's the whole thing. You don't bring it out in front of a carrier strike group in a training environment with thousands of sailors, because something could go wrong and it could be, the technology could be revealed, so to speak. So they just say we wouldn't do that. So, I mean, those arguments, I think, still hold water today with that, all the 3 videos and all the events that are going on around those specific cases. The Nimitz is like probably one of the most unusual, just simply because Commander Dave Fravor got so close to this object and had such a good recollection of what he saw, and then team that with multiple witnesses with the other pilots that were in his flight. So very interesting.
It always kind of strikes me as, I mean, when I listened to Fravor's, comments during that whole thing, I mean, it definitely wasn't the reaction I would have had. But, hey, we've all are different things. And to me, it is confusing because you do hear from people who are in the military or in the black project world or different things. And they, from what I understand, there are people that say we absolutely would have to test, this in a real life, like the Skinwalker Ranch. You're testing things in a real life scenario, and what, that's, you want to see how fighter pilots are reacting and processing things, and how people in specific areas are processing things as well. And so it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the counterintel side of it. And, I think the Navy veteran Carson Camerzell that I interviewed, that he was on the Princeton, he sort of came forward and was very critical of the pilots, saying, I think, hey, you weren't on our ship, dude. You don't know what happened on our ship. So don't say that, people didn't come and take all the tapes off the ship. You weren't here. And then he goes on to describe that he was very aware that there was a cover story, which he said was falling ice crystals that were creating these false radar returns on the Spy 1 radar. And that part of it would have sort of covered the radar stuff where the guys were seeing these tracks descending, from high altitude down to the surface very fast. This was ice crystals in the upper atmosphere reflecting off of the inversion layer or something, or they were falling off of a tanker or something like that. So he saw this. If anyone asks, this is the story. This is what you're to tell them about. And I believe him. And he said that there was a briefing held on Nimitz with some of his coworkers in his space, in the intel space he worked in, that went to Nimitz, and that was brought up. And he did say that some of the pilots or aviation people laughed at that, that explanation. But then, as he and I talked about it, we were like, well, what if they all then said, that cover story sucks or whatever. So why don't we just say it was a UFO? They all look at each other. I'm just kind of making this up. But what if that happened and they knew about it? They knew about a test. They were part of a test, but then just kind of like chuckled and said, oh, this will be a great gag. We can all play this up, and down the road, we can all tell a story about how we saw a UFO. And we're not giving away anything because we're not supposed to talk about it, but hey, we saw a UFO, and it could, that was Carson Camersell's idea. And we sat there and talked about it like, wow, could that really have been what happened? And this was all a counterintelligence operation from the very beginning to cover something. It's plausible, but people tell me on the outside, that's really highly unlikely, Dave. I mean, the moving parts of that would have to be so extremely controlled that it seems almost impossible that you could pull that off with all these people. And then they could convincingly go out on the news media and History Channel shows and all this time and maintain this like cover story. But I don't know, maybe they can. I'm not an expert in psychology and those types of operations. So if it was real, either all the pilots didn't know and they were kept in the dark and are acting with authenticity and honesty when they say, we didn't know what it was. It was a tic tac and we chased it, but it performed like nothing we have in our inventory, and we don't know what it was. They're being honest. Or they knew what it was and they are towing the line, like saying that. I mean, what else? I mean, what the other part of it is, no, it actually was. No one knows what it was. It showed up, and they went out there and exactly what you see in the Times report, and exactly what the commanders all in the jets say, and what the UAP task force is tasked with doing, and the videos, they're all saying, we don't know what this is. It's not ours. So that's plausible, I guess, in a way. It's kind of unusual that, oh my God, what does that mean? But right? I mean, what's easier to swallow? I mean, in some ways, I'd rather it be the Navy's like messing with us, but, or the Air Force or something. But on the other hand, I kind of like we don't know what this was. And like Lou Elizondo says, wake up. This is real. We don't know what these are. We need to pay attention, and we need to press Washington to make the military do something and take it seriously and find some answers,
It is interesting, and it is, of course, you've got the Bigelow boys and, that whole crew that are, they're all there, and that could be, I think that because things are so compartmentalized, and with stuff like this, it would be a little bit easier to perhaps promote a story that wasn't necessarily, yeah. And so, there's so many questions. And I think for me, as you've seen my process with, Skinwalker Ranch and going from thinking that this is a paranormal Disneyland portal. I mean, the portals are opening up, and here comes the hairy man and whatever, all this stuff, and it's like, and then realizing, holy crap, this was just really all made up to like a psychological operation, and it's been carefully crafted and put forward to manipulate people's beliefs and to, to kind of push people away from the truth. Mm-hmm. And so it's definitely is fascinating to look at all of these things from a perspective like that, which stinks because I would rather go for the plan, the first option, because it's a lot more enjoyable to me, really.
Yeah. I mean, I want to go with the first option, but then, somebody will email me and they'll say, their deep background and that they have this insider knowledge, and they're going to say, I'm going to tell you that stuff is U.S. Air Force advanced platforms of anti-gravitational devices, and they'll go on and like try to tell me that, hey, I'm just letting you know that this is our stuff, kind of like a spy is gonna come and tell me that. But again, personally I flip back and forth, because I'll go to the one side, like, man, I really believe that they don't know what it is. They don't know what the Tic Tac is in 2004. And then sometimes when I get that email, I'll go, wow. Or, Carson will say, look, they were trying to say it was ice crystals. Why would they do that? Why would they need a cover story? Maybe, and then, you get to the UFO is like a joke, and they're like going to use that as a gag and enjoy themselves as they kind of pull one over on everybody. But I'm not sure I know the truth. And, I mean, the stuff that just happened, with the USS Kidd, that whole case, I don't know if you want me to get into that right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that'll be fascinating. We're going to take a break here for just so you can take a little breather. But it is fascinating, and I have, now that I have the Androffel archives in my hot little hands, and I'm, reading all of the cases that she studied decade after decade, and a lot of these types of sightings are taking place in the same areas where they, have been conducting testing and doing all sorts of things. It's just been, the whole thing is so fascinating. And, I don't know. I love, it's just a never ending riddle. And it's fun. Yeah. Like just like looking at all of this and then learning about the new technology and looking at what, a different country has in their arsenal and how they use certain things to try to distract or, I don't know. It's cool. I love it all. But I mean, and what do you like? Let me just ask you, how many people witnessed what happened on the Nimitz?
Oh, well, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands of people in all of the various ships and vessels were either very aware of it. Now, who actually saw the objects with their own eyes, I would, reduce that way down. But quite a few did. And, a lot of the people that I talked to that were on the USS Princeton saw these objects during that month outside on the deck when they would be out there at night, not so much during the day. And, I think that there's probably a lot of people that were on the Nimitz that saw stuff too during that week. So it wasn't just the pilots. And there's some information that this stuff continued on into December of 2004. The main event took place November 14th of 2004, but then they went back to port for the Thanksgiving break that November. The ship went back out into the SoCal op area in the beginning of December and continued on doing that ADEX training. And there was a veteran that contacted me that said that they continued to run intercepts on these objects. So he's saying that they had them on radar, first of all, and that other pilots intercepted these things. So, I think there's dozens of people that had firsthand sightings of these Tic Tacs.
How interesting. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. And I remember I interviewed, Kevin Villa, and this was so long ago, but he was on board, and he had kind of snuck out one night and then had an experience. And I mean, he was just so timid about coming forward and things, because that, I mean, for somebody like that, he was in a position where he shouldn't have been to begin with. And then, you've got that stigma. And I mean, people, most people in the military don't take this seriously. And I have, a friend who is a Navy pilot and things. And I mean, I don't think the UFO subject was ever taken seriously in his world. And so it's just, I don't know, the whole thing is fascinating.
Yeah, it totally is. And I think it's a lot more open now, like from what people have been telling me recently, that, when they go on the ships and talk to these guys, they're like way more open about it, and kind of, they've all like, they're all seeing them. They're like, oh yeah, we see those things all the time. I mean, that's kind of like what people have been telling me on some of the cruisers and destroyers, and so it's probably bigger than we even imagine.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I've got so many questions that I cannot wait to ask you when we get back, but we're going to take a little break, and I just want to say thank you, Dave, for being here. This is great. I love talking to you, and again, I think every time I see you and your family, it just makes me happy, so thank you.
It's all about love,
It is about love.
Bring that into your life.
Well, I love it. You just have such a happy look about you. I mean, that sounds kind of cheesy. I don't even know. Clearly, I need to read more self-help books.
Well,
I'm not quite sure what's happening. But that's good. So I think that's awesome. We need more of that. So thank you for being here. And if you, during the break, if you want to go to the NimitzEncounters.com, read the story, look at the documents and articles, purchase movie posters, just different things. It's a beautiful website. You can see that. I would definitely go there and check it out. I want to thank everybody for getting in and supporting the show. You can go to UFOClassified.com to help keep the show on the air, and I appreciate all of you who do that. You really are incredible, and thank you for your contributions. We are going to take a break, and we will be back, so make sure you keep asking questions in chat. I will get around to them. Thank you for all of that. We will be back in a moment. Okay, all right. Assuming that I actually unmuted my mic, which would definitely be the seventh sign of the apocalypse. It's looking good so far, so praise the Lord. I don't know. We'll see what happens. And I think we ought to just, like every show, we ought to just, look at where did Erica, what did she forget to do this time? And obviously I get a good chuckle out of it, and I know you all do as well. So anyway, thanks for being here every Friday night and listening to UFO Classified. Next Friday, I'm going to have Jack Brewer on. Jack has been doing some digging into NICAP and the people involved back in the early days, and has found some interesting things. And I really like Jack. I had a great conversation with him the other day, and so he will be here next Friday. That will be great. And again, I want to thank all of you who support the show. I love hearing from you, and I'm sorry I've been a little quiet as of late. There's lots going on in the life of Luke's, but that's okay. So anyway, I hope you're all safe and happy. I am here tonight with Dave Beaty, and he is an Emmy award-winning producer and cinematographer. He does exceptional work, absolutely gorgeous. And some of the things that he has done, things for Inside Edition, America's Most Wanted. Ooh, Inside Edition, that just brings back so many memories. That was when I was in my prime. When did they stop Inside Edition? Do you know?
I think it basically it was like they would call us when there was something in our region, like kind of as stringers, and it was always some crazy story, like I can't even think of it, but yeah, you're reading kind of down the litany of stuff I did. It's like been a long time since that. So. A current affair,
cool. Oh, I know, I can hear the theme music right now. It was just so, everyone was so dramatic, and I loved that. That in Current Affair, was that Maury Povich?
I forget who was the host of that, but I remember it was like the triangle thing that would come together, like
Exactly.
there, and it was like, you know, tabloid. It was tabloid TV. It was the birth of that whole genre. Interesting. Yep.
Oh my gosh, I might have to YouTube some of those videos later tonight instead of my Zoom cat conference, court thing. Yeah. Oh Lord, it doesn't take much these days, but what can I say? So, you were mentioning, which I think is really super cool, about some of the things that you're doing with World War II veterans and getting their stories on the record. And could you tell us where we could find more out about that and how we could see it?
Yeah, I work with a producer for an organization called the World War II Foundation, and he has a website called www.foundation.org, and he puts all his videos on his website. So if you go to that website, you can click through and, find really well-produced films about many, many historical scenarios from both the European theater and the Pacific theater, Pearl Harbor, everything. So if you're a history buff and you like learning about military history, check it out. Yeah, he has sort of an educational mission, and he has up in Rhode Island, he has like a museum where he kind of headquarters his foundation out of. So it's a lot of really good content, and the films do air on PBS nationwide. We just finished post-production on one called Surrender on the USS Missouri, and it was picked up by, I think, approximately 200 PBS stations across the country. It'll be coming out, probably in the next couple months, and you may see that on your local PBS affiliate station. You would just have to look at their schedule to see when it would be airing. A lot of times you see our films come out and they'll use the Veterans holiday or the Memorial Day holiday to showcase these stories. So yeah, it's very gratifying.
So cool. I love that. And I mean, that's such an amazing generation, and they're so stoic, and it's so cool. I love it. That's very cool. I'll definitely be checking that out. I need I need new material, because I'm telling you, watching a bunch of Viking shows is, I don't know. As cute as those Viking boys are, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done the Foo Fighter show, the World War II Foo Fighters episode yet, but I've learned a whole lot, that's for sure. I mean, every time I do one of those films, I just, immerse myself in it. So for sure, check it out.
How cool. Absolutely. That is really, really cool. And I want to ask you, because I was thinking in the first segment about, you had kind of mentioned that, every once in a while you'll get an email message from somebody who's offering you a bit of information. And Lord knows, I think we all have these instances where people come out of the woodwork and they approach you, and then, you can fall down different rabbit holes. But what have been some of the more interesting experiences that you've had with people approaching you and maybe giving you inaccurate information?
Mm-hmm. Well, I opened myself up for that, because when I posted the Nimitz video, the Nimitz Encounters short documentary, at the end of it, I asked for people to send me their reports, especially if they had reports from military units, and either them or someone they know. So I've received over 1,000 emails since doing that a couple of years back. It's hard to keep up with it, because sometimes they come flooding in, and it takes a lot of time to answer emails, and I didn't realize how much time until that happened. So, one really interesting email came in from this guy named Jerry, and he claimed that he was stationed on the aircraft carrier USS Midway, and I believe this was in the 70s. So, he's up in age now, because he was, somebody that worked on the deck moving planes around something like that. And he described this really strange event where it started out where they first observed an object in the water, underwater, like a USO that was glowing a green emerald colored thing, and it came up along the side of the ship, and they were seeing it. But that then they had this really weird reaction, like that everybody that saw it all of a sudden had this really deep negative feeling. Some guys were crying, and it was like this bad sort of juju. So that happened. And then he goes on to describe that a whole, like at that time they were flying A6 intruders off the Midway, and they were doing some type of demonstration flight, or it was like the last flight where the whole squadron was going to go up and do a formation, change of command or something like that. And he says that he claims that they witnessed a UFO, and then the entire squadron of A6s, or a whole bunch of these planes, went MIA, sort of Bermuda Triangle like thing. And it was just this incredible like story. Like I was like, what? And I kept talking to him, and he went on and on and on. He was like very detailed. I mean, I even think I found the guy in a cruise book from that era. Like he was on the ship, you know. But then he would start saying things like, you know, so first of all, I try to look up accident investigations of Navy, you know, aircraft that were lost at sea of that year. And these records exist for the 70s. You can go back and look at that kind of thing and see if a plane was lost. And there was nothing really. There might have been like one plane, and it was an accidental thing. There was nothing about a whole part of an air wing, you know, or a part of a squadron that was missing, and nothing about that. So he went on to say that even the chaplain aboard the vessel had, in that cruise's yearbook, had written something about it, you know, mentioning that the families and so on, and paying homage to these heroes that had, you know, gone missing. He, you know, pretty much connected it to this UFO, basically, that something happened. So, you know, I then found that book that he was talking about, and I showed it to him. And, you know, I think he really believed what he was telling me, Erica. It seemed like he wasn't pulling the yarn or whatever. He was like, he believed what he was telling me really happened. And when I showed him this book, he was like, he couldn't believe. He's reading the pastor's mention at the end of the book, and it had nothing to do with any planes being lost or anything like that. And he I think replied to me, this must have been changed. This must have been modified or altered, because I remember, you know, that was like one of the strangest ones, you know. And I reached out to some more senior investigators like Rich Hoffman and guys like Powell and those guys, and they said, yeah, you know, they're like, you'll get stuff like this where somebody will reach out to you with like this really detailed remembrance or something that happened, and you find out that didn't happen, you know. I mean, I guess when I look at that, I don't think the guy was trying to hoax me. It didn't come across like that at all. It seemed like he really believed it, but it was like a delusion or something. So,
wow. I mean, yeah. It is fascinating, and I think it's, you know, unfortunately in this subject, we're, you know, people that are delusional, or people that purposefully know how to manipulate us are I mean, it's very interesting. And I know over the years I've had, you know, pretty high profile people approach me and, oh, I love your work, and, you know, let's be friends, and I'm going to give you this little bit of information and that, and hey, put that out there. And I mean, I am so glad there have been times when I just have just kind of just sat back and just take notes, and then, you know, 5 years later, I get, you know, look through the notes, which I always do, because I've got more notes than anybody on the planet, I think. But it's like I go through and have specific, you know, I mean, folders on people and the conversations I've had, and then you go back and you connect the dots, and then you see how things are playing out. And I'm just so I don't know. I'm just so grateful that some things I didn't really put forward.
Yeah, I mean, consider that I was trying to reach out to Navy and military veterans and active duty and people. So when they would contact me, I mean, I think my initial skepticism of it was like, okay, this guy's telling me the story. Was he actually there for number one? Is he trying to get attention by jumping on this and, basically BSing me into hoping that I'll believe him? And, so I was very guarded and checking out. If anybody came forward that I was going to use, the first step was to make sure they're who they said they were. And I'm kind of glad that really everybody that has ever contacted me checks out. And there's a lot, believe me, that have not come forward because they don't want their name used. They said that they, have jobs in the Department of Defense or contracting, and they don't want their name used. But when I check them out, all of those people so far have checked out. But these are not, people that are in weird government programs and stuff, or celebrities that might have an agenda, the famous conference UFO people and all of that. None of these are just down to earth usually.
Well, that's comforting. Good Lord.
Yeah, I mean, these are like people from the French Air Force or the Canadian Navy and the Australian Armed Forces, and people from all over the world have contacted me with these stories, pilots, and it seems all to be, in my view, from that perspective, all from the heart. And they're telling me these kind of firsthand accounts that sometimes are startling. And I've collected a huge sort of archive of this material. I'm not sure how I'm going to use it, but the main reason I was trying to propel some of the research on these cases such as the Nimitz forward, and I have. It's been incredible. And then some of the new cases came directly from that effort behind the scenes.
How interesting. I mean, it is fascinating just to sit back and look at all of these things and characters that show up in your life. And I've been particularly fascinated at the fact that there have been so many people from overseas that have an interest in what's going on, especially at Skinwalker Ranch, and things like that. So it does make you wonder sometimes, but I don't know. But I mean, if you were to look at a specific, country, like who would you say? I mean, who's approached you the most from what country?
It's sort of interesting because the other day I was looking at the demographics of the Nimitz encounters. I'm like, okay, well, who's watching this? Because I'm up over like 5.5 million now, I think. And that's just organically through YouTube. And I looked at the analytics, and I think it was U.S. was number one, UK, U.S. and Canada, but then number 3 was like Philippines. I'm like, wow. It's like, close behind. I'm like, that's interesting. No one from the Philippines has ever said anything that I know of, but, on the chat, but they're like right there. So it's a huge audience that has watched it, that has an interest in that subject matter, I guess. And then, out of the people that have contacted me with reports, I would say, number 1 is U.S. from all branches of the service have contacted me. By far, that's the biggest number. Behind that, a lot of people from Canada and not so much the UK military. A lot of people contacted me that are civilians with reports. And then Australia has been very high on the list. A lot of reports from there. So I would say that's about it.
Interesting.
I don't remember any other countries, but.
Very interesting. Yep. I always find that fascinating, to say the least. Yeah, that's interesting. And I want to just get to a couple questions in chat. And Steve has a question about. He mentions that back in 2019, in some of the interviews with you and Gary, you were leaning towards the fact that maybe the Nimitz encounter was military tech. So what has happened to kind of shift your thought process on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I always said that, hey, I'm on the fence and I go back and forth, I would say since then, I'd have to look at the exact interviews that I've done or people I've talked to since then to say, well, where was I then? I mean, Carson Camerzell by far pushed me towards it being us more than anyone else. I mean, the guy's brilliant. I mean, if you listen to what he says, not only the robot voice version, but the one, I mean, both, that's his voice too, but, or his words, but then when he's, talking to me in person, his insight, being sort of an intel person, and like, I would say a genius, based on my conversation with the guy, was like, wow, you're pushing me to believe that this really could be our stuff that we have to consider. And then he added to that his own personal, viewing of what he said is the triangular formation of lights from the deck of the Princeton that moved what he says looked like what you might see in a racing drone today, that type of movement, lateral back and forth movement, which matches the Tic Tac in some ways, but he didn't see a white oblong thing. He saw 3 running lights. So I think that, that currently, was like one of the things that kind of pushed me towards believing that it could be us. But then again, I'll like consider what Lou Elizondo is saying and, the recent revelations of close encounters with a triangular object by Navy fighter personnel off the Atlantic coast, that allegedly is in this UAP task force dossier that includes strikingly close-up photographs of this triangular shaped object filmed by fighter pilots. So, if that's real, well, is that ours too? Or yeah, I mean, I think your guess is as good as mine, Nothing's pushed me either way, more than the other. So
interesting. And I do have to say that I do appreciate the fact that you're, I mean, hey, more evidence comes in, you might think one thing one day and then another day. And I have completely shifted my thought process and things. And it's like, it's important to just be, okay, this is what's happening. I'm not going to, look back 5 years ago and I'm not that little bright-eyed bush-tailed girl anymore.
I'm open-minded skeptical, but I'm more open-minded than Mick West is. That's not a dig at him, but I think he always goes directly to the prosaic explanation side of the debate and tries to, dig his heels in there, where I'm way more open-minded to other explanations. If someone's willing to provide a well thought out critical and analytical thinking to their argument, I'll listen to it,
Do you ever wonder why more information hasn't been brought forward to the public? I mean, I think of, especially like Skinwalker Ranch and the fact that we had NIDS and they were promising to give us all of this information, and then, oh, nope, just kidding. And then, now we've got similar promises of information being put forward to the public, and then we never seem to get that. We just get more of the same narrative. And so, what do you think?
Well, I mean, as far as private industry goes and individuals that may have a propensity for hoarding information, and, I can't answer to that, but I understand that there's trade secrets and stuff. As far as the government goes, I think a lot of it is means and methods, sensors, and there's so much in the military that is classified. And it just has to do with, they don't want anyone knowing what their capabilities are of the FLIR camera. They don't want to know anyone to know what the capabilities of the radar system, that, go on just down the list. And so if anything was captured on one of those systems, it's immediately classified. doesn't matter, what. So that's one of the biggest hindrances to getting this stuff out, in my opinion, is that it was captured on some sensor that's classified, and if they can even mention the name of the sensor or not, then the showing anything or talking about it may be a problem. So I think that's one of the reasons that we don't see more from DoD about stuff that maybe they filmed or pilots filmed or other personnel have filmed. For instance, like the ships themselves nowadays have teams that film anything that's unusual. That stuff's not out in the public because it's classified. So if we need to stop classifying everything and look at it and go, is this really a danger to national security? If it's not, then release it or block out the telemetry information, with a mosaic, cover it up with something, and don't show that, and get it out there. Stop classifying everything and start declassifying things that the public should know about.
Well, I mean, and it's an interesting thought. I mean, I keep asking myself, what in the world would, why, if there is some craft that is popping, here and flying along ships and doing all of these things, why in the world would we go out in the public and admit, to the world that we aren't as superior as we claim to be, I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, it's always a chess game, right? Like our military is playing this chess game of global security with adversaries and war fighting stance. I mean, when you read this stuff about what we're doing, it's a huge chess game, namely with the Chinese now, mm-hmm. and of course the Russians. There's those guys, and it's so guarded, anything we know and anything we're doing, that they don't want to tip their hat to reveal anything. And I think that that's the biggest hindrance. Like you said, why would it matter if they were seeing something that was coming along Navy ships? I mean, it could expose vulnerabilities that they don't want anyone to know about, if that's something they're working on but haven't yet.
But why would they let that get out there? You know what I mean? It's like if there's something that is exposing vulnerabilities, you would kind of think you'd keep it on the down low. Yeah,
I mean, consider like a scenario where a Russian submarine is in New York Harbor. That's ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. But what if that happened? And would you want to know about it? I mean, would you want to know our Navy, for some reason, couldn't figure out how to stop that from happening, blah, blah, blah. So there's a scenario you might go, the public has a right to know about incursions with our own homeland by foreign powers. Not talking about, in some theater of war in Afghanistan, but right here in our own, territorial waters, if there's incursions by foreign powers, do we as a public have a right to know about it? I think we do. I want to know about it, and I want to make sure that our military is responding to that. If new technology is coming forward and we haven't found a way to deter it or identify it, we need to get that right now. And I think the public is the way to get that information out there, so that they put pressure on Congress and our elected officials to say, this is something that we need to get an answer on, to make sure that we are following up, analyzing, and we have very smart people that are looking at it saying, okay, guys, we got this. We hear you loud and clear. We are looking at this, and we're not going to let a Russian sub into New York Harbor. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I want to know that. And if it does show up there, I want to know that too, because I think we have a right to know if a UAV or whatever comes flying around a Navy ship off San Diego. So it's my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, and I think, we should have a right to know a lot of things. We should have a right to know, mm-hmm. if we're drinking contaminated water, or we are, we're potentially being exposed to radiation, or we are, all of these things that honestly, we're some pretty important questions and that deserve answers, and we don't get it because there's so many factors trying to stop us from getting the truth about all of these things. And so I don't know. I mean, it's just so layered.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in protecting national security, and our military fighting men and women their safety and security has to be protected, and revealing any type of information that could give, a foreign power any upper hand, that's completely off the book for me. But, I just think that the public should be aware of threats, to you and I and to them if somebody is eavesdropping and conducting cyber warfare against our systems and hacking into everything. Everyone should be, know that that's happening, and and also know that there's people that are very smart that are helping to stop that, and that are working on figuring out ways to prevent it. And if it turns out that this stuff is unknown, like, hey, this is not China or Russia, hey guys, well, we need to figure out what it is.
And so who do you think is really in charge of that investigation? Like, what's taking place with, the task force and I mean, to me, well, now I'm going to go read self-help books. I won't say what I've said. Okay, maybe I will say this, but I mean, it's like, to me, to have some of the people that are the mouthpieces for this making decisions on national security or how to engage if there is a potentially, another life form here. I mean, like I've said before, I don't necessarily want Elizondo making those decisions for me, but.
I mean, because this has been placed into the realm of DOD, it's more of a, war fighting posture question. We basically tasked the Navy through ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, to figure out what's going on with incursions into our training ranges and around Navy installations and all military installations. And we've basically given this to a group of people, and I don't even know. They're probably understaffed, underfunded, and they're just said, okay, you deal with this. And these guys already had other duties, and suddenly their boss tells them, okay, guys, you're in charge of all of this, the problem, so to speak, in quotes, and oh, by the way, in January or whatever, they find out, okay, now you have to have a report done for the American people in Congress by June, which I doubt's going to happen, because, I mean, I think the scenario of understaffed and underfunded is probably very true, and the resources might not be there. So to come up with a comprehensive report on the problem of UAP incursions for what, the last year, are we talking the last 70 years? I don't even know what that is, but hopefully they gave them some parameters of, okay, well, let's just start at 2004 and we'll go forward from there. And that's the report. I feel bad if that was handed to me. I'm like, oh my God, I have to come up with something and deal with this. But it's not just that. It's a huge issue for them if there's no answer. If it's not, I mean, consider the fact that you get all these photos and reports and everything, and Commander Fravors detailed debriefing and all these videos, and you're sitting there going, look, we have no idea what this is.
Yeah. And
we haven't been studying it long enough. We just started, last year to try to figure out what this stuff is, because we were worried about China and Russia. We were dealing with a threat we understand.
Right.
We can deal with that reality. This is something that's so far outside of the box of what we're defending against that we don't even have a position to begin to try to, like, first of all, you don't understand it. Second of all, how do you defend against something that seems to have capabilities that are so far beyond anything we have? That's just, I mean, I guess there's like feature films where they just start blowing nukes up,
Right.
that's like the alien thing. Okay, well, if we see one, we're just going to detonate a nuclear weapon, like that'll take it out. But I don't think that's the answer, obviously.
I would definitely say not, but I'm
No.
sure some people feel that you got to use our military might and blow whatever this is out of the. I don't know what. It's just very interesting.
It's a military problem. The UAP task force is a military group. They're looking at solutions for military personnel and units that have witnessed incursions into controlled sensitive areas and so on. If this is not like a Blue Book or a Condon where they're looking at, the government's looking at trying to understand UFOs. So I would assume that any report we get is geared totally towards, number one, trying to identify the problem and see if it's, one of our conventional adversaries like China or Russia. And if they even possess that capability, it may be something like that. That's what we're going to get. Like they're going to say, we have not been able to identify Russian or China capabilities that demonstrate the capabilities of the observations. That's what Lou Elizondo has been saying from the beginning. Maybe this task force will continue to promote that idea, saying that we need to continue studying the problem.
Well, it is interesting, and I have to ask you to not to change the subject, but I will because of this. I think this is very fascinating. But so okay, you've got Douglas Cheeks Kurth. So tell us how he fits into the story and how you first heard about him.
Yeah, in the very beginning, the former fighter pilot Paco Chirichi wrote the article in the Fighter Sweep magazine. He was the one that broke the story in the Nimitz. It wasn't known before that. He was acquaintance or a friend of Commander Fravor. In his article, he goes into detailed description of how this Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Kurth was flying a fighter jet off Nimitz in 2004. That's how he starts the story. He describes how Kurth saw a disturbance. Well, he was actually tasked to go to an area where they had an unidentified, and he started flying over that direction. He sees the disturbance on the water. At the same time, they had directed Commander Fravor in another jet to the same spot, so they told Lieutenant Colonel Kurth to knock it off and head back to the ship. So that's the story, really. He left. He saw the disturbance on the ocean of the boiling water. He allegedly did not see the Tic Tac. So there's some conjecture if he saw it or not. He's never said he did. So then he landed, so go past that to the formation of the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, OSAP, and the $22 million that was awarded and the money that was contractually distributed to Bigelow, Advanced Aerospace and Space Systems. That was BASP. Yeah, and then he begins hiring all kinds of people. He begins constructing classified spaces that can store materials from the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. This contract was being handled by with what I would call a front description of far-term advanced aerospace weapons applications. That was the front kind of window dressing of this program, in my opinion, to hide from Congress and the American people and anybody that was snooping around looking at it going, why are we spending money on a UFO program? You know what I mean? Like,
but they've been
that
telling us that. You know what I mean? It's like, that's
would raise red flags. I mean, would they have gotten approval and authorization from the the black projects, to give them that money? But anyway, so they got the money, and all of a sudden, this fighter pilot from the Nimitz encounters is hired is part of this Bigelow group, the company that was handling this contract. And we, a couple of researchers and I discovered this on his LinkedIn account because we were looking at everybody. And I forget, Dean Johnson, I think, was the other guy, and Keith Basterfield. A bunch of us were just scouring through LinkedIn, and a lot of these guys have their public profiles. And we started, wow, wait a second. He was the Nimitz Tic Tac guy, and now he's working for Bass as part of this, UFO study program. Why? Was he the one that did the executive summary, the 13-page report? Was he hired by Bigelow because he was there and then he knew all these guys that was a direct intentional move? Everything, all the questions I've asked were like, no, not at all. He just saw there was an opportunity with this company, and was an employee there, had nothing to do with that. But I always sort of read things into it and think, wow, it's too coincidental. Bigelow definitely hired this guy because he was a direct firsthand witness of the Tic Tac stuff, and he wanted him on board so that he could continue the investigation, and plus he had all the contacts.
Or continue the narrative.
Yeah, well, either that or continue the narrative. But there's a direct link there. I don't know what it means. And that was the last. He kind of moved on from that once the funding ran out. And now I believe he's an F-35, a decorated, war hero, and an F-35 instructor pilot. So.
And so I have to ask you, this is like totally off topic. Oh, well. So Dave Sex Fravor, how did, where did that nickname come from?
Well, that's just his call sign. And, I don't, there's stories behind everything, in Navy aviation, and the sex favor, sex favor. He's giving away sex favors or whatever.
Baby Joseph, I need to bathe in holy water now because I'm not going to be able to get that visual out of my mind.
So, yeah, well, he did. In all the interviews I've seen, he doesn't seem to mind it or whatever that he got that. There's some definitely worse call signs. Watch Fighter Pilot podcasts, and they all talk about how they got their call signs, and once they're, you don't choose them, by the way, and once they're assigned to you, you're stuck with it, whatever it is. So,
Oh, I'd love to hear that story. Whoa.
I think it was probably just to play on his name, the senior pilot. Like, hey,
I would be willing to bet you're probably right on that.
Yeah, just to bust on him, probably, and I can imagine that was a running joke throughout his career, whenever he came up on the net or whatever. So,
yeah, that's a good one. No, that cracks me. That's funny. That's really funny. I love it. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there because
I don't even know. What was Chad Underwood's? Was that Nuts?
Oh,
was he Nuts? I forget.
Wow.
And then the Fravor's backseater was Noodles. But here's the bad one. Like the other pilot, the female pilot, she changed her call sign. By the way, her call sign during the Nimitz encounters and also on the PBS, the PBS series Carrier was Cone with a K, and that harkens back to a Navy aviation slang term for new pilots that are kind of like cone heads. Oh. It's not a complimentary term, and so she had that call sign called Cone, K-O-N-E, and she changed it to New Girl. So, guess she didn't like it.
Well, this is interesting stuff. At least to me, I love these little stories. They're just kind of make me smile, and they're fascinating.
And I didn't use her name, by the way. So
yeah, that's
it was not one of her name used, so I did not mention her name.
So the USS Kit. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Give us the lowdown.
The lowdown. So 1,000 emails come in from my request at the end of the Nimitz Encounters film, which, by the way, is an ode to unsolved mysteries, and Robert Stack. At the end of every episode, he would say, "If you or anyone you know has information, please contact the number on your screen. You can remain anonymous." So I did that at the end of my film. I got thousands of emails come rolling in over the year or two, and one email was a guy from the Nimitz Encounters. He was on the USS Chaffee. He was an air intercept controller, Top Gun certified, air controller. He would send the jets they would say, we take them to the fight. We bring them back safely. They use the radars to do so. He said, "Did you hear about the incident on the USS Kidd in July 2019? I said, "I had not." And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "It was a similar type thing. I knew a guy that was on the Kidd. He said he was a friend. He was on the ship in 2004 with me. He retired like me. He works for a contractor or DOD. He was there that month in July." So I did a Freedom of Information request on the deck logs for the USS Kidd, and they came back, and I went through them, and I started finding all kinds of unique entries about sighted unidentified UAVs and drones and that kind of thing. It might be UAV spotted, that simple. And then the next line was like, "Away Snoopy team, away." Didn't know what a Snoopy team was. It was spelled with a IE, like SNOOPIE. And so then I looked at that on the Navy website, and I quickly found out that these are teams of photographers and videographers that they can call out at any time of day or night, and they have to run up to the bridge out onto the superstructure and videotape and photograph anything that the officers on the bridge want. In this case, these unidentified UAVs. So going through the Kidd deck logs, this was happening over and over. So I went back to my guy and I'm like, I found it. I can't believe that you told me this. And like they're saying that there were unidentified UAVs. They don't say UAPs with a P or UFOs. You just say UAV, which is unmanned aerial vehicle. That's what that stands for. And they also use the term drone in these logs. So I was posting all of this on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook as well. Everything that I found, I was posting out there into the net, so to speak. What this guy was telling me. From the very beginning, when I asked him, I'm like, the way this looks here, couldn't these be like drones or something? And he's like, no. He goes, the crew was freaking out with his words. These were not drones. These were Tic Tacs. So that's coming from a secondhand witness. He's friends with the guy from the Kidd. I can only take his word for it, So around this time, the French researcher Marc Zicotti and I began communicating, and we decided that, I just said, hey, there's no reason why we should both submit FOIAs for these ships independently, because it takes a lot of work for the Navy to do the redactions. And I go, why don't you go after some of the ships and I'll go after some of the ships that were there, because we found out that there were about 8 or 9 ships all in the same area operating at the same time. These were destroyers and cruisers and so on. So he, submitted FOIAs for some. I submitted FOIAs for some. And over that next year, he wrote a couple blog posts. A guy named Dr. Adam Kehoe got involved. He started looking at the ship's transponders. All Navy and all maritime vessels have to have transponders, much like aircraft do, for safety. And they were looking at transponders on the publicly available data that tracks ships in the ocean. around that time, and they found a lot of different vessels in that general vicinity, which is off Southern California in the Navy operations area. So the FOIAs come back, and I'm like, wow, we have like 6 or 7 deck logs, and they're all correlating, and the amount of information about these UAVs and drones is just sort of overwhelming. When I started reading it, I was blown away. And, several weeks back, Adam and Mark Cicciotti released an article with the Drive website. And that's the one that kind of really blew this up to national attention, where you had Forbes and Popular Mechanics and NBC and Fox and lots of the more national media suddenly paying attention and, running stories about this event, which the headlines would say drones swarm Navy warships. It's really focusing a spotlight on this case and the Navy because the deck logs show multiple indications of these UAVs or drones coming very close to the ships, and the Navy not seeming to know where they came from. And, basically one of the Mark's FOIAs showed the Navy inquiring whether some of these other ships in the area might have had a drone on board, like, having the Coast Guard contact the ship and ask them, do you have a drone? In one of the deck logs, you see that they were asking a cruise ship, the Carnival Imagination that was nearby, if they had drones on board. And, the answer was no from the ships that they had contacted, the American vessels that were there. I'll just stop here because I can just keep rambling.
No, I think this is fascinating. And I mean, it's my show. I can go as long as I want. So keep on going.
Yeah. So, there's several logs missing. There's several ships that we know were there. The logs are missing. That's not an indication of anything nefarious. Sometimes that happens. We don't know why the logs are missing. We're kind of sad that happened, but we have the logs of like 6 vessels, and starting on July the 14th, 2019, at approximately 9:20 in the evening, these drones started appearing, and then they continue to appear every day or so through the end of the month, in my opinion. I don't have every vessel through the end of July or even beyond that, but several of the vessels I do, and the spotted unidentified UAV continues through the end of the month with no indication that they knew what they were. It was extremely foggy around that time in July out there, and the visibility would drop to like less than 1 mile, and maybe even less if you're in the fog, you can imagine. And then add to that, then the sun would set and it would get really dark, and so you're in the fog and these UAVs start showing up. In one case, the ship actually said that they stopped doing horn blasts so that the guys on the superstructure outside could listen to hear if they could hear the drones. It didn't say if they heard anything, which I thought was pretty interesting. Another log entry says that the U.S. Kid is sort of hailing on open marine channels that whoever's operating the UAVs, please secure. Or, in other words, hey, whoever's, just basically on a common channel 16 or whatever, like saying, UAV operator, please secure usage. Wow. And this is the Navy blasting that out to all the ships around. One entry states white light hovering above flight deck, which what is that? You know, like, I don't know. I mean, so my friend was like saying that these things were not drones, but a couple days ago, a guy came forward saying they were. And I talked to his brother-in-law. I believe the guy. I haven't personally vetted his brother-in-law's credentials, but I believe based on what he showed me, the guy's real. He said that on his ship, which was the USS Paul Hamilton, that the crew members thought that these were Chinese drones that were flying off of a oil tanker nearby, and they were spying on the Navy or just kind of messing with that Navy.
Wow.
Like, and he said they were laughing and waving at the drones, like, and his brother-in-law said, well, what did they look like? And he said, we couldn't tell. They were just like red and green lights, and they couldn't really see a structure to them. And his brother-in-law said, oh, well, I filmed them on my phone. I'm going to have to go back and see if I can find it. But he said they probably wouldn't look like much other than just like a white light in the night, you know, like a light. They were not close enough to really discern, at least to his ship. But we're talking, you know, 9 or 10 ships that were there. So the perspective of all these different crews and all these different ships is pretty intriguing.
That must have been frightening, actually.
Here, I'll just read you some. I have a spreadsheet I've been working on where I'm basically hour for hour, day for day, writing down when I see interesting log entries, and I can look across and compare. Like, here's this would be on the 14th from the Bunker Hill. Snoopy team away, Port Bridgewing, spotted unidentified UAV. On the Kid, same time, a couple minutes later, away Snoopy team for 2 UAVs, set Bancon 1, set River City 1. Those 2 orders are to stop all internet and usage of radios, basically radio silence. You can't use your cell phone. The internet's shut down. It's like, you know, they do that to stop people from capturing RF from the ship and also to increase their own capabilities. USS Paul Hamilton, away Snoopy team, secure people working aloft. Set River City 1. So to me, that means that they pull in their watchstanders that are outside. They bring them in and then River City 1 again is stop all communications with the outside world. Same time on USS Rafael Peralta, USS Kidd reported UAV overhead, operators to secure use. Away the Snoopy team, John Finn reports 2 drones overhead. And then it says Commodore is on the bridge. That means the commanding officer of the entire destroyer squadron was on that ship. He's like the freaking general, you know, like of that whole group of ships. And he was there at the exact time, so he saw him. And then it says, that's where it says USS Kidd reported UAV overhead, warned operators to secure usage. So that's where they're on the radio, and the other ship's hearing this on the radio, so they hear the Kidd saying, you know, operators of UAV, please, you know, like kind of freaky. And then at 23:27, I forget what time that is. You have to convert that. I'm not military. So it says, white light identified hovering over the ship's flight deck. And then visibility, like within a minute later, visibility reduced to less than 1 nautical mile. A few minutes later, sound signals secured due to sound search of suspected UAV. This goes on, day after day. It's like freaky.
That must have been very disconcerting. I can't imagine being, you know, involved in that.
It gives me chills.
It
gives me chills just reading it. I'm like, what the, you know, if you were there and you were in charge of keeping the safety of your crew, and you're like, it's at night in the fog and these lights are surrounding your ship, like what the, you know?
No, that's frightening. And so when you look at some of the technologies that we have, right now, I mean, I going back to, there was an article in 2018 about the Navy is testing swarming underwater drones in summer exercises and different things. And you look at some of the technologies that other countries are utilizing. I mean, could it be? Do you think it could be something that is a man-made technology?
Based on these reports, they are just simply reporting seeing something. It's a static point in time. None of these logs describe speed or loiter capability. Like, it doesn't say UAV, departed at 500 knots. It doesn't say that. It's just like, so if you think, okay, well, if these are lights and they're hovering, yeah, that's totally capable. I mean, there's technology that totally could do that. Even off-the-shelf drones, could possibly do that. An off-the-shelf drone, a high-end one, out at sea, from line of sight, probably could operate, 5-10 miles from the operator. And a lot of the advanced drones can have FLIR cameras, so they don't necessarily need light conditions to visualize whatever they're seeing. So a FLIR camera on a drone could, fly out at night based on GPS and fly up to a ship and hover alongside it quite easily. And if it was, if they were Chinese, like as that one sailor said, I'm sure that if it's Chinese military or government, they would have much higher end equipment, and they could definitely mimic what some of this says stuff. And some of the reported descriptions of these drones, why would they do that? Why would they? It could be, as the sailor from the Paul Hamilton said, that they were just messing with us, that we do the same to them. The Chinese Navy and the military messes with us. We sometimes fly our jets close to their vessels. They sometimes come close to our vessels. It's sort of a game of cat and mouse. And he thought that was what they were observing. Until we talk to some other witnesses, which I'm sure is going to happen based on some of the scrutiny that this is getting. I hope somebody talks that was there, until we hear from some sailors of each of these. I have 6 deck logs here. Each of these vessels has 300 to 500 sailors aboard. And you know that every one of those sailors was aware of what was going on here. And if they could get away, they would be up looking on the deck, trying to see what this was for sure. So,
wow, I'm just imagining myself being there and experiencing something like that, and it must have been very unnerving.
Yeah, I mean, and that is what the original email that I got from the AICS on Chaffee told me. That he said, first of all, he said, Dave, my guy said these were not like drones, like, DJI Phantom or whatever drones. He said they were large Tic Tacs visible directly from the bridge, a line of sight from the bridge. So that stands in stark contrast to Chinese things flown off, unless they're flying Tic Tacs, off of an oil tanker nearby that was messing with the Navy. So, here I am, and I talked to both guys, by the way. I didn't directly talk to the Paul Hamilton guy. I had to talk through his brother-in-law. He didn't want to talk to me or any other reporters so far. But I did see the text exchanges with his brother-in-law, and it looked legit. Everything that I heard and saw from who that guy was looked to me legit. I had no reason to dispute it. And the researcher Tim McMillan was there with me in that conversation, and he concurred with me that there's nothing to sway us, that it's just that you can't use that in actual news article without direct confirmation of a witness. You can't just accept what someone says from their brother-in-law. You know what I mean? So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you have that guy saying, Chinese drones. You have this other sailor saying, no. So it's right now it's 50-50. We need some other people to come forward to let us know. And hey, I mean, you know, in the end, we may find out, yeah, it was Chinese drones that were messing with our ships, flying around unimpeded. The Navy didn't know where they came from, but that's the most likely explanation. I don't know.
So what types of actions were taken? If there was something that they were, I mean, concerned
Yeah.
about, I mean, what do you know if they took any?
We would almost 100% guarantee that these were tracked with radar and all kinds of sensor systems. The Snoopy teams all photographed and videotaped everything that they saw. So we probably acquired some very high resolution FLIR imagery of these objects, enough to very, you know, in my opinion, identify shape, size. The radars would have like identified speed, where they came from. You know, I mean, Spy 1 radar can track something out to 256 nautical miles away. Small things like a drone. There would have been radar. There would have been the Theodore Roosevelt was out there, and I happened to, you know, get to know somebody that was on the ship that week. He wasn't Navy, and he explained that he was out there as a guest of the Navy, but he was on the ship, and he said he didn't know anything at the time about the drones, but during this whole thing I just described, they were scheduled to be on the flight deck at night watching the pilots doing night carrier launches, and they were quickly rushed out. It was canceled, and they were rushed down below decks to their you know, their berthing, and they couldn't come back up. And he said that the F-18 fighter jets launched the rest of the night, all night long. And the Navy was sort of tight-lipped about it the next day, why they canceled it and what was going on. But he said that he got a real sense that there was some event happening that was unplanned. They didn't know what it was, obviously. And then later, the Navy didn't mention anything to him. Since they were just guests of the Navy, they weren't, you know, in on any of it. I thought that was pretty unique that this person contacted me, and he provided a bunch of pictures to me that showed him on the ship, showed him where the ship was, provided me with a lot of details, and I have his, you know, I know his identity and so on. So he didn't see anything, but he just gave me this other little piece of the puzzle. So we know that Theodore Roosevelt was out there launching jets. We know that numerous Navy ships were out there with high-powered radar and, you know, FLIR systems and Snoopy teams with all kinds of cameras and video. And they were setting these kind of go dark commands, like where they shut down all radio communications that makes it really hard for an enemy to get a lock on their radio signals. And so to encounter, you know, electronic warfare, their ships appear almost in the background noise level. You know, they can't be tracked when they do that. That's what that, you know, set MCON Alpha 1 and River City 1 and all these commands are ordered to the ship to make them less observable to sensors of the enemy. Or maybe they want to observe the background themselves. Maybe the ship wants to scan around themselves to see all radios stuff that's EMF stuff that's coming in, and they don't want to contaminate that with their own transmission. So there's a lot of reasons why they might do that. The other kind of weird, startling thing is there's one command that occurs on the USS Kidd where they seem to man one of the chain gun 20 millimeter cannons directly after a sighting. So, I mean, it's in the middle of the night and it comes right after spotting a UAV, and then they man this cannon system that is a 20 millimeter automatic cannon that is controlled from the bridge with a joystick. it has a FLIR system that allows the operator to track an object and probably lock onto an object. So if that was related, which I believe it was, they were concerned enough to like engage that system, and whether they were preparing to shoot it if they got approval, or if it started to be more threatening to the ship, I don't know.
Wow. I mean, okay, you need to come back. You need to update us on this. And congratulations, you did a great job on this, and that was really cool. I'm just
it's all new information.
That, and
it's all like happening now. So everything I just told you is like kind of cutting edge. The stuff that Mark and Adam did is pretty new, and then I just added to a lot of it here with my own research. So
that is so cool. Well, congratulations. Good job.
Well, thank you.
That's really, really, that's cool. And I knew that we were going to have fun. And I've actually, I think, gone longer with you than I have on any show. So congratulations.
I just talk a lot. I blab.
No, I love it. This is cool. This is really, really fun. And thank you for you've been such a great supporter of the show, and I appreciate that. And I just, it's fun. And like I said, you and I both, one day we think this, and then we get more information, and it's going to be something different. And it's never ending, and it's a fun journey. And so I appreciate all of your work. And Scott wanted me to ask you from In the Field if you have another UFO documentary coming out or anything like that soon.
I hope so. I mean, obviously, it's a labor of love, and if there's something that warrants that, I mean, this case seems pretty interesting. It could just be end up being Chinese drones, which wouldn't necessarily.
I think even that's cool. I mean, a fascinating story.
Got to have the people's story, so we got to find the witnesses that are going to tell their story. Right. And if we had that, then it'd be really interesting, I think. Yeah, why not? I mean, I'd love to do a film about this. I can imagine the fog and the ships like at night, and then this white light, suddenly comes out of the fog. That's pretty crazy sounding. So
no, that's cool. And I bet visually, I mean, you could have some real fun.
Yeah,
doing that. That's cool. Well, we'll just put that out there in the ether, and you can make it happen. And definitely, I mean, in the next month or so, come back and we can talk more about this as things evolve. And best of luck with you. And just keep posting those wonderful pictures of you and your family.
Okay.
Thank you for making me happy. And thank you. And I want to just say, you can go to theNimitzEncounters.com to check more out about that. And is there another website people can go to follow you?
A lot of the Nimitz stuff is on my YouTube channel, The Nimitz Encounters, so you can hear all of the witnesses that are not in that film. I post them as I get them, and hopefully there'll be some more coming out soon.
And what is your YouTube channel called?
The Nimitz Encounters.
Oh, well, duh. God.
Yep.
Oh, Grandma Moses needs to take some ginkgo biloba and maybe get her memory. Well, it's not. Anyway, I tell you what. What can I say? Aging is a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you. Oh my God, I know. I'm like, seriously, Anyway, aging, stress, COVID.
Where's my keys?
Yeah. Oh well, Lord. I mean, I need to just have a Velcro bodysuit. So I can stick my sunglasses, my car keys. I don't know, whatever I'm looking for an hour. That would be good. Just stick it right on me. But thank you very much. You have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Enjoy the ocean for me. And we will talk very soon. And I want to just, give a shout out to everybody who you guys are in chat. You're asking great questions. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them, but that's why Dave will come back. And so if you go to UFO Classified, you can always pledge your support to help keep the show on the air. And I appreciate you all very, very much. Next week, Jack Brewer will be here. It'll be great. So you guys all stay safe. I'd like to say stay out of trouble. Chances are I might need a little breather from that this weekend. We'll see. But thank you, Dave. And good night to all of my friends. Stay safe, and we will catch you next week. Good night.
so my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
I want to put it to use to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is, and you just kind of adapt and overcome.
What are you going to do with all this? You can't even take care of your own files and get them put into the current system, but yet you want to go collect other people's things. So where are you going to go with this? Who are you giving all this to?
It just really struck me about how the common thread seemed to be deception, but deception of a human nature. So that's what I started thinking, who would these folks be? I mean, then I started thinking about the intelligence agencies, what role they could play, and what would be their motivations for getting involved in ufology.
I'm not saying that because the gimbal is not a rotating flying saucer, that means that all the UFOs are false. Not at all. All I'm doing is I'm looking at this one case, these individual cases, and seeing if there's an explanation for those. So try to, if I could ask people out there listening, don't think that I'm trying to attack your entire beliefs about these things.
Nice to be in orbit.